Let me tell you guys about BellyUpSports. BellyUpSports is the internet sports bar. Go ahead and check out their website, www.bellyupsports.com, to read some great articles from great writers all across the country, from hockey, baseball, golf, soccer, you name it. BellyUpSports is the premier, not your average website.
Two beautiful things happened the day that I got power. One, obviously, I got power back, so AC, which is a necessity here in Texas. And we got the news that one, Gregg Berhalter has finally been fired. The crazy thing is that it took this long for the U.S. soccer to finally fire them. I think U.S. soccer was hoping that people were just going to stop talking about it, but thank God. I know people say it's delusional for fans to think that they have some impact on this decision, but I think it's merited. I mean, there was pressure not only from fans but from the media finally. And I think that that's a good thing to come from as far as like where the growth is in this country now. So that's positive. But I'm gonna be honest with y'all before we get into the whole Gregg Berhalter spiel. U.S. soccer is so fucking problematic. The federation is probably also as corrupt as can be when we talk about. It's very fitting because we're CONCACAF, because there's a lot of corrupt federations in North America and Central and Caribbean, and the U.S. is no slouch on that either. They're not very aggressive. They have not taken any sort of control over the soccer that's even played in our own country. I mean, let's be frank. The fact that MLS can just to the Open Cup. I mean, I value it, but by the occasion, on the occasion, doesn't matter. Like, if it depends on my mood when it comes to Open Cup. But being that they don't try to at least act like they care about the Open Cup is also a concern. And so I think U.S. soccer, there's a lot of big issues. I think that while the manager is a very important decision that they need to make, there's also a lot of cancers that are in that federation over at U.S. soccer. And that's until then, I still have my concerns for this federation. If it wasn't for the fact that we have finally got a crop of players that are benefiting from finally having a clear pathway from youth level all the way now to professional. Because let's be honest, this is why we're calling them the spoiled golden generation, is because they're finally the ones that got to benefit a true player pathway. And so if it wasn't for this generation of players, if it wasn't for Gio Reyna and Timothy Weah and Balogun and all those names that you could think of, there would be no hope for U.S. soccer. But obviously, that's a whole other topic for another day. But right now, Gregg Berhalter has been fired. Jose, you and me have had our problems with Gregg Berhalter for a very long time. We've actually spoke about our frustrations, but I mean, what was the breaking point for you to have Gregg Berhalter be out?
The breaking point for me was a long time ago. It was watching, and look, man, for those who don't know about my allegiances locally, in terms of the footy, that the clubs and the teams that I support, I'm a major FC Dallas fan as far as MLS is considered. And I thought it was a travesty that even despite some of the form he was in, Jesus Ferreira being called up to the World Cup roster over Pepe, I think was criminal. I think, sure, in a Gold Cup against some of the Caribbean nations, he might produce for you. I would say even for FC Dallas, sure, he's got a great record of a goal tally with the club, and no homegrown has ever done what he's done in terms of producing at that level. But it's I think with what we've seen from the lot of players that we know we had access to and could have called up, it just felt like a comfort zone move. And I feel like that's what Berhalter is a comfort zone coach. You never hear anyone talk about how Gregg was able to push this player to be their absolute best, to reach their potential, et cetera, et cetera. You hear about how cool he is off the field, how Tyler Adams never had a conversation with him about soccer or football. Maybe that's part of the problem, right? Maybe he needed to be a little more tough, or he wouldn't be in the situation he is in now, which is, again, unemployed. Rightfully so, in my opinion. I never advocate for someone to get fired, but holy hell, he needed to be fired. Like, he really did. And I think at the end of the day, his rehiring said everything I needed to hear about the U.S. Soccer Federation. I think they're not going to shock and awe anyone in this process. I think from my perspective, maybe I'm being negative, maybe I'm being a pessimist. I don't know. But I've been following this federation for far too long to feel optimistic about where we go from here. Am I excited to get a new coach? 100%. It is absolutely necessary. Just to even freshen up morale and like make the players feel like they're on the right path moving forward. But I don't believe the Federation will be able to land someone or even wants to land someone that is so far and away different from what they've prioritized in the past, which from my perspective has always been things like culture, things like growing the game here domestically. From my perspective, nothing grows the game better than winning as many games as possible. And so I'm hoping that factors into the decision-making process at least more than it has in the past, but I'm not super hopeful. So.
No, yeah. I mean, I think for me, the breaking point with Gregg Berhalter, it's been actually a good while that I wanted Gregg Berhalter out. Obviously, I think I was pretty quick to like see, okay, yeah, he's winning matches, but look who the fuck we're playing. When I started noticing that trend where, hey man, when it comes to the upper echelon nations, and I'm not saying we're gonna spank England or mop the floor with Spain or anything like that. And I'm not saying we're gonna be able to shut down Lionel Messi, but I do expect them to at least punch above their weight. That's what I do want to see. And it's it does get frustrating when you do see, Mexico upsetting Germany, in the 2018 World Cup. It's frustrating to watch Costa Rica make their semifinal run back in 2014. And you're seeing other CONCACAF nations being able to punch above their weight. And besides Mexico, those are nations that we have a lot more better resources than. And it's also I've watched a lot of Gold Cups, and I've been more impressed by other nations, not the U.S. And it's like the U.S. is just kind of skating by, and then just waiting to get to the final and just handle their business. But then I'm over here being wowed by Curacao, being wowed by Guatemala
or Panama this past Gold Cup.
Panama, and Panama. This Copa America, impressing me also from them. Canada impressed me. I called them out in our preview. Out in the preview, and look what they did.
Look at Schaffelberg, bro. You know what's crazy about that Canadian run is that like it's like so many Americans were, even after Berhalter got fired, we're hoping for Canada to lose. I'm like, why? It reinforces the message. It shows that you don't need world beaters in terms of talent to get results. I mean, don't get me wrong. Jesse Marsch has one win in or maybe 2 wins in 9 games with Canada. Like, it's really not impressive, his overall record. But what sticks out is a semifinal appearance in Copa America with your leading talents outside of maybe Alphonso Davies, or let's say Kyle Larin. A lot of talents on that team being Major League Soccer talents. When we were griping about the fact that Gregg was calling up MLS players at certain points throughout his tenure, seeing Jesse Marsch do it with Canada because he frankly has to, and still getting results. It is very possible to see a coach do nothing more than will his players to win, which was the rhetoric right now around this whole process from, I don't know if you saw this clip, but frankly, the people, the pundits and the personalities over at CBS are kind of starting to piss me off. Guys like Charlie Davies, guys like Brian McBride, talking about some of the candidates that are up for hire and what's needed to get this team to the next level, acting like, how do they say it? That a rah-rah guy is not what they need. I would say it's absolutely what they need, amongst other things. But they need a fantastic competitor who knows how to get the best out of who's in and around that locker room. And that's one of many things that whoever this next hire is going to be has to have. But Jesse Marsch has that in spades, and Canada was able to get the most out of their potential in this tournament. I think that the U.S. at a minimum has to look for someone who at least has that trait. Because I can't stand the conversations that are being had right now from those who have a platform. It doesn't, not everybody, don't get me wrong. There's plenty of creators at the independent level who are being very realistic about this process. But I think the way some of the bigger media groups are talking about it, it's like they're trying to have hot takes on purpose, man. I don't know what it is. Maybe that's what it is. I can't really tell, but it doesn't make any sense to me. Like when they talk about guys like Hervé Renard or anybody else, it's just like they seem so uneducated on who those candidates are and what makes them unique and why they should be targeted. But anyway, we could jump to that part here in a little bit. I just think that there's something to be said about those types of managers. Jesse Marsh and the talent pool that he had, achieving what he did, and you mentioned it before, punching above your weight. We just haven't seen that from this U.S. men's national team in so long that I don't see any major problem with the competitors who are the rah-rah guys, because there's a lot to be said about that type of manager right now.
Yeah. And I will say, like, the last straw, which obviously was the game that affected everything for the US, which kind of, I guess what you would say, led to this downward spiral for Gregg Berhalter, which was the Uruguay game. I mean, that game was a mess in general. I mean, you'll hear me and Kelsey kind of talk about as far as how CONMEBOL wanted to kind of cut corners when it comes to this tournament, even though all the blame is going to be on the US. But you know, watching how that game transpired, there was nothing inspirational. There was no fire lit under them. Even like you're gonna have the refs are gonna be bad. Like there's nothing you can control about it. But what you can do is get these guys back in the game. And of all, like, if you're keeping an eye on the Panama game, it's fine. I get it, but no one needs to see you fucking tell them, "Hey guys, the score is 1-1," which
that shit's crazy to me, bro.
Didn't even fucking matter because it was 3-1 at the end of it all.
What's the mentality? Like what? Like just think about it. Like when have you ever? I've never even at the youth club level ever seen a coach scream out another score line to his players to get them motivated, to reset their mind. Like none of it. I've never seen that. When I saw it happen, and I keep in mind, like for those who don't know that I do this, I was live streaming a watch along for this game. You could go see it on the GolzTV YouTube channel. I was in shock for like 2 minutes after the fact. I could not believe the senior manager of our senior U.S. men's national team was doing this as a means of getting more out of the players he had on the field. The mentality of this man was beyond me. It's fucking crazy.
Yeah. I mean, so there's a lot of things that are just one of those things where I'm like, I cannot believe this guy still has a job. That's a prime example. I mean, I'll be honest with you, the way he handled the Gio Reyna situation was very poor on his part. The thing is, I say this to people, like, he leaked the information. All he had to do was put 2 and 2 together. He's doing some motivational speaking.
It was a leadership summit or some shit. Like it was
ironic.
A weird scenario. Yeah, exactly. Bro, I'm not even kidding. I said the exact same thing. I was like, it's so ironic that he was at a summit about exhibiting good leadership when he did the exact fucking opposite. But yeah, man, I mean, not to take any words out of your mouth, but it was just the guy, I don't know, man. For someone who's touted by the players in this camp as being a good man manager, he did the exact opposite with that scenario. And at the end of the day, he did the one cardinal rule. You never expose your players or anything that stays behind closed doors. That always remains behind closed doors.
Yeah. And so after I found that out, I was rooting for Claudio Reyna. Even though I still to this day believe that he has a very punchable face, which is
fair. That's fair. To be fair, Gio does too.
Yeah, he does. It's a family trait.
Yeah, 1,000%.
But yeah, so I mean, it's been a frustrating. His term has. I kind of wish that after the World Cup they would have fired him and just left it be, and then you have to. And this is where it comes into play about my thoughts of the U.S. Soccer Federation, where they just spend I don't know how much money on a search committee, but I know it's not cheap to only just rehire Gregg Berhalter. And then mind you, in the meantime, the U.S. is playing great. So, like, and this is why my counterpoint to everybody that it's not the players. The players clearly can play because once again, BJ Callahan had this team playing probably the best football I've ever seen from that crop of players. And this is once again our quote unquote golden generation. And so it was frustrating to see that this team is what they're capable of. And mind you, there was MLS guys in those BJ Callahan call-ups.
Yeah.
And they didn't look, it wasn't like, oh, the quality is inferior. It looked very solid performances from those US teams. They dominated their competition. They handled the Nations League, which you're supposed to. And then obviously Berhalter got hired, and then they had to go back to playing Berhalter ball for Gold Cup, and that's why they looked like ass. And so for me, it's more so than not. A coach could be the big solution. Obviously, U.S. Soccer Federation is still a massive problem. But I mean, at the end of the day of it all, Gregg Berhalter's gone with 2 years left into our cycle for the 2026 FIFA World Cup, and we can't fuck this up.
Yeah,
like there has to be a good performance with the World Cup, and the positive of being grouped in Copa America is that everyone now sees what we see in Gregg Berhalter. But I will say, Colin Cowherd, stick to football. Stick to talking about soups and being worried about defensive coordinators that wear the baseball caps on backwards, because you have no right to talk about soccer. You're talking about winning percentage. Look who the fuck Gregg Berhalter played. And you can see why he had such a high winning percentage. What you should be looking at is his winning percentage against top 20 teams, because that's what's atrocious.
Yeah.
And so I mean, it's great that that American pundits want to have an opinion on these things, but it's also, once again, kind of makes us look bad at the end of the day because they don't know what's going on.
And look, and if someone like personally, I think if Coward had just put the disclaimer out there, like, hey, you know what? You could play dumb on your fucking show. You don't necessarily have to be a quote unquote expert in everything that you talk about. You can literally say, and this will gain so much trust with the fan base. You can literally say, guys, do these types of stats that typically matter in other sports matter in this one, right? Because the beautiful game is unlike anything else. This is why stats by SofaScore or FotMob or whatever sparks these debates on the timeline don't really matter that much. When they lean into the stat argument first, I'm like, you didn't watch the fucking game. Just say it. You didn't watch the game. So you're throwing all these stats at me to try and make your loose point that I can easily poke holes through because I watched the game and I saw that player play with my eyes. And there's a lot to an eye test that will never show up in stats. Defenders, goalkeepers are the primary culprits there, but like just all across the pitch, there are things that players do that you'll never see on the stat sheet. So it's just unlike any other game. And I think Colin Cowherd took that approach and played dumb, played ignorant. You know what, man? Fair enough. At least you're showing interest. I can hold your hand through this process, brother. But if to come in acting like an expert, like you can diagnose the problem, like you're some shady fucking doctor from down on the Cayman Islands that only gets hit up when something really hits the fan and they have no one else to go to. I don't know, bro. The whole thing reeked of those types of vibes where like, it's what's the term? It's, when someone is, seemingly fake or they feel, imposter syndrome. It's just reeked of that. Like this guy is trying to act like he belongs, but he doesn't. And he shouldn't try to. Like, I think a lot of fans would honestly, even other fans outside of this game, would buy into soccer if he would just come out and say, guys, I'm trying to get into this. It's the most exciting time. The World Cup's around the corner. In 2 years, I want to be living and breathing this, so I'm getting into it now. Cool. Awesome. I think a lot of people would say, bro, I respect the shit out of that. I'm gonna start listening to the takes and I'm gonna chime in and engage on your posts when you put some out there because I know that you need the help. Bro, everybody would respect the absolute shit out of that, but not this. Guys, Berhalter's the answer because he's won more games technically than any other manager in history. I'm like, brother, you're so far gone. It's wild. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, you can't change the federation. The federation, it is what it is until. Hey, maybe now that U.S. soccer fans see that they can make impacts, them and the media, which is one of the things that like also needs to be change here in the US is that there needs to be pressure towards the federation, pressure towards the teams, because that's what makes this different from Europe. That's what makes this different from South America. Just don't be going through vents. And you'll be, so those are the things that makes that helps. And U.S. soccer has been comfortable knowing that they can do whatever they want because no one's going to say anything. Well, the World Cup's in 2 years, and the Americans want to see the U.S. be dominant. And I mean, we're weeks away from the Olympics, and we're expecting the U.S. is expected to dominate in every sport that is given to them. So, soccer it needs to get caught up, and I think that it's going to change now. People are more aware about soccer here in the U.S. than you guys think, and it's not, you can't be playing dumb with us anymore.